Amara was a humble 14-year-old girl living in a small, quiet village with her widowed mother, who worked day and night repairing old clothes and selling a handful of vegetables to keep their home running. Life was never easy for them, but Amara held on to a deep dream in her heart, a dream to finish school, find a good job, and finally give her mother the peaceful life she deserved. Every morning, Amara slipped her feet into the only pair of shoes she owned, old, cracked, and stitched so many times that the seams barely held together. Inside the torn soles, she had placed pieces of cardboard to stop the stone from hurting her feet. Still, the shoes were weak, and every step reminded her of the struggle she tried so hard to hide. At her school, the difference between students was clear. Some children arrived in shiny cars, wearing clean uniforms and polished shoes, while others came from homes like Hayes, trying their best with whatever they had. But even among the poor, Amara's shoes stood out, making her an easy target. Her classmates whispered, pointed, and laughed loudly whenever she walked past, calling her shoes fake and treating her like she didn't belong. Their mocking cut deep, but Amara kept her head down, swallowing her hurt and showing a quiet strength beyond her age. She reminded herself that her worth was bigger than their laughter. One day, she believed, everything would change, and the same people who laugh at her today would be shocked by the girl they once ignored. The news of the school's cultural day spread through the classrooms like wildfire, filling the building with excitement as students talked about neat clothes, polished shoes, and perfect appearances. But for Amara, it only brought a heavy ache to her chest because she had nothing new to wear except her faded uniform and the same worn-out shoes she tried so hard to hide. That night, after helping her mother finish repairing old clothes, she sat under the weak lantern light and gently cleaned her shoes, wiping away dust, smoothing the cracked leather, and brushing on leftover black dye with shaky hands, hoping they would look just good enough to blend in with everyone else. The next morning, while students walked proudly across the school grounds in bright outfits and shining shoes, Amara entered quietly, praying no one would notice her, but her hope broke the moment a group of girls spotted her and burst into loud laughter, pointing at her feet and shouting that her shoes looked fake, painted, and patched with cardboard. Their voices echoed across the assembly ground until more students joined in, turning her small embarrassment into a public humiliation, and although several teachers saw what was happening, they simply looked away, pretending not to notice as Amara stood frozen, feeling her heart crumble inside her chest. With her eyes stinging, she turned and hurried to the bathroom, locking herself in a tiny stall where tears finally escaped despite her trying to silence every sob. But as she cried, she began remembering her mother's tired hands, long nights of work, and all the sacrifices made just so she could attend school. Slowly wiping her face, Amara whispered to herself that she could not give up, that her mother's struggle could not go to waste, and with a trembling breath she forced herself to leave the stall, walk back into the noisy hall, and face the world again, carrying not just pain, but a quiet strength she didn't even know she had, unaware that this same painful moment would be the beginning of a change far bigger than she could ever imagine. The morning after Amara's humiliation felt strangely tense, as if the air around the school carried a secret that no one understood yet. Students gathered on the field again, whispering about her shoes, but their chatter slowly faded when a group of visitors walked through the school gate. They were members of an NGO known for sponsoring talented students from poor backgrounds, and their arrival immediately caught everyone's attention. Among them was a sharply dressed woman, confident and calm, wearing a simple but elegant black suit that made her stand out from the rest. Unlike the teachers and students who stared with curiosity, she seemed to be observing quietly, studying each student with thoughtful eyes. When her gaze eventually landed on Amara, standing at the back with her head down, the woman paused, watching the girl closely as if she saw something no one else could. She noticed Amara's quiet humility, the way she tried to stay invisible, and yet carried a strength in her posture that refused to break even after yesterday's humiliation. Feeling a pull she couldn't ignore, the woman walked toward one of the teachers and asked softly, "Who is the girl with the patched shoes?" The teachers exchanged awkward glances before explaining that Amara was not only one of the poorest students in the school, but also the top performer in every exam. The woman listened carefully, her eyes never leaving Amara, her expression unreadable yet strangely warm. The teachers couldn't understand why she seemed so interested, and even the students felt a shift in the atmosphere, sensing something unusual. For the first time, the whispers were not about mocking Amara, but about the mysterious visitor who seemed to see value in the girl everyone else ignored. No one knew what was coming next, But one thing was clear. Amara's life was quietly moving towards something far bigger than anyone could imagine. 2 days after the NGO's visit, the principal called an emergency assembly, his voice louder and more serious than usual as he announced that the school would hold a scholarship test for students who showed promise but lacked financial support, a chance that made the entire school buzz with excitement and nervous energy. Amara felt a small spark of hope rise inside her, but it was quickly crushed by the whispers around her. That evening, while other students relaxed or watched TV, Amara sat at her small wooden table, studying under the weak glow of a single candle, flipping through borrowed textbooks with determination burning in her tired eyes. As she walked into school the next morning, her classmates mocked her again, laughing and saying, "Even if she passes, who will sponsor her? Look at her shoes." Their cruel words stung, but Amara kept walking, reminding herself why she worked so hard. When the test began, she sat quietly at her desk, blocking out the whispers and the laughter, focusing only on the paper in front of her. She wrote with steady hands, solving each question with the calm confidence of someone who had nothing but her effort to depend on. By afternoon, the results were out, and shock rippled through the school when it was announced that Amara had scored the highest. But while some teachers clapped softly, the principal frowned, whispering to his staff that Amara might not fit the school's image, hinting that her poverty could be a problem. Standing nearby, the sharply dressed woman from the NGO overheard every word. She didn't react, didn't interrupt. She simply watched, her expression unreadable as she began forming a plan in her mind, realizing the school had no idea just how wrong they were about the girl with the patched shoes. The morning started like any other, with students lazily walking across the school grounds, adjusting their uniforms and preparing for the usual assembly. But something in the air felt different, a strange buzzing tension no one could explain. As Amara quietly took her place at the back of the crowd, faint rumors began spreading. Some students claimed they heard loud engines flying over the village earlier, but no one paid much attention until the ground suddenly trembled beneath their feet. In the distance, a powerful roar echoed through the sky, growing louder every second, and before anyone could understand what was happening, a massive private helicopter appeared above the school, its blades slicing the air as it descended toward the open field. Screams broke out instantly. Students panicked, some running for cover, others rushing forward with wild curiosity, while teachers scrambled outside, trying to control the chaos as dust and wind blasted across the compound. Amara stayed frozen at the back, her heart pounding, but she assumed, like everyone else, that whatever was happening had nothing to do with her. When the helicopter finally landed, the doors opened slowly, and out stepped the same sharply dressed woman from the NGO, followed by 2 security officers dressed in black, all of them moving with quiet confidence that made the entire school fall silent. Every student held their breath, wondering who such important visitors could possibly be looking for. The women scanned the crowd with calm, steady eyes, and the tension grew thicker with every passing second, until she lifted her hand and pointed straight at Amara. Gasps exploded everywhere. Students turned toward her in shock, some whispering, "Huh? The girl with the fake shoes." Teachers stood frozen, their faces burning with embarrassment as they realized how badly they had underestimated the very girl who now held the attention of someone powerful enough to arrive in a helicopter. In that moment, the entire school understood that something extraordinary was unfolding, something that would change Amara's life forever. As the entire school stood frozen in disbelief, the sharply dressed woman walked slowly across the field, her heels tapping against the ground with confidence that made every whisper fade into silence, and when she finally reached Amara, she did something no one expected. She gently knelt down to Amara's level, showing a respect that teachers had never shown her. Amara's eyes widened, confused and trembling, while the woman smiled softly and introduced herself as the CEO of a major international foundation that sponsored brilliant students around the world. She explained that she had once been a poor girl too, growing up with struggles very similar to Amara's, and that she saw a reflection of her younger self in the girl with the patched shoes, the same strength, determination, and quiet dignity that she believed could not be taught, only carried in the heart. Then, rising to her feet, she turned toward the shocked crowd and announced in a clear, steady voice that Amara had been chosen for a full international scholarship, one that would cover her education from start to finish, including travel, housing, supplies, and every opportunity a brilliant student deserved. The woman continued, saying their foundation would also relocate Amara's family, ensuring her mother could live comfortably while Amara studied, and that Amara would soon be enrolled in a prestigious academy known for shaping future leaders. Gasps spread through the students, especially those who had mocked her, as they realized the girl they laughed at was stepping into a future far bigger than any of them imagined. Overwhelmed, Amara felt her knees weaken as tears streamed down her face, not tears of shame this time, but tears of relief, gratitude, and the overwhelming shock of seeing her entire life change in a single moment. As the shock of the announcement settled over the school, a small group of students who had mocked Amara earlier slowly approached her, their faces filled with a mix of guilt, jealousy, and confusion. Some of them apologized quietly, unable to meet her eyes as they admitted they were wrong, while others only pretended to be kind now that they knew she was important, hoping to win her favor. Amara listened to all of them, feeling old wounds reopen inside her chest, but instead of letting bitterness grow, she took a deep breath and chose forgiveness, not for them, but for her own peace, because she refused to let their cruelty shape who she would become. Even her teachers stepped forward, their voices soft and regretful as they admitted they should have defended her, and though their apologies came late, Amara accepted them with a calm nod. The principal, however, tried to twist the moment by loudly claiming he had always believed in Amara and that her success was proof of the school's support. But before he could finish, the woman from the foundation spoke firmly, correcting him by saying Amara succeeded despite the lack of support, not because of it. Her words exposed the truth, leaving the principal embarrassed and silent. Through all of this, Amara felt a new strength rising inside her, not anger, but clarity. She realized that forgiveness did not erase the past, but it freed her from it. And as she looked around, she understood that her life was already moving far beyond the limits that had once held her down. Moments after the announcement, the sound of another car engine echoed across the school gate, and Amara's mother hurried in, her face filled with confusion and fear as she saw the helicopter, the crowd, and her daughter standing in the center of it all. When the CEO walked toward her with a warm smile, Amara's mother froze, unsure of what was happening until the woman gently explained how brilliant, hard-working, and strong Amara was, praising her character in a way the mother had never heard from anyone before. Tears filled the woman's eyes as she realized her daughter's worth had finally been seen. Soon, Foundation staff brought out new clothes, travel documents, and an official invitation for Amara and her mother to fly out immediately so Amara could begin her new life at a prestigious academy. The entire school watched in silence, unable to believe how quickly everything had changed. As Amara held her mother's hand and walked toward the helicopter, whispers spread through the crowd, this time filled with awe instead of insults. When she stepped onto the helicopter stage, she paused, turning back to look at the school ground where she had faced so much pain, humiliation, and loneliness. But now, standing there with the wind blowing through her hair, she also saw the place where her strength was born, where her story began before turning into something extraordinary. With one last emotional glance, she climbed inside as the blade spun faster, lifting her toward a future brighter than anything she had ever imagined. As the helicopter carried Amara and her mother toward the city, a soft montage of their future began to unfold like the opening of a new chapter. Amara stepped into a world she had only seen in pictures, tall buildings, clean streets, and a modern academy filled with students from different countries. She walked through the hallways with quiet confidence, amazed that this new life truly belonged to her. In another moment, her mother was shown receiving stable work provided by the foundation, her tired hands finally getting the rest they had long deserved. Their small, struggling days slowly faded into the past as hope replaced fear, and dignity replaced shame. The story's narration shifted to a gentle, powerful tone, reminding the audience that true worth has nothing to do with appearance, and real beauty lies in strength, character, and kindness. It spoke of how cruelty can break someone temporarily, but it can never erase the greatness hidden inside a determined heart. Then, the final message rang clear and unforgettable. Never laugh at someone's struggle. The same person you mock today may rise higher than you ever imagined. The scene ended with Amara standing outside her new school, wearing her new uniform, her shoes shining in the sunlight. She looked ahead with confidence, no longer the girl trying to hide in the back of the assembly, but a young woman with a future so bright it felt limitless. Her journey was just beginning, and everything she had endured had shaped her into someone extraordinary.